What is happening, good people? We are here for Macro Dirt Podcast number 20, and we've got a green chicken with us. What's up, Doomberg?
Tony, JD, how are you doing? Great to be here. Congratulations on the show, by the way, 20 episodes. It's been really phenomenal. I know it's been a big hit with your audiences.
Yeah, we're having a great time with it. What's happening, JD's Nuts? How are you?
What's happened, penis breath?
That is great. You are brightening my day up every time with these. I just want to let you know. So we are in post-Trump election victory market world right now, and it is nothing less than fascinating. You know, yesterday was the biggest post-presidential election rally in the S&P. $22 billion went into the markets yesterday, into ETFs. If you follow the flow numbers, that's a good week in ETFs. Usually in ETF inflows would be 22 billion. We had 4 sigma rallies in the DIX dollar index, Dow Jones, industrial miners, financials, industrials, a 3 sigma rally in the S&P and Bitcoin, airlines, natural resources, energy, 2 sigma rallies in the NASDAQ. I mean, this is a powerhouse breakout. If we thought, JD and I, that there was a dip coming, the chances of that are diminishing greatly, in my opinion. Let's see what you guys have to say about what just happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to understand what's happening with the election, you have to watch the peso. Seriously. So in 2016, if you look at an intraday chart of the peso into the election, the peso got waxed a couple of hours before Trump got elected. Like, it called the election, right? And the same thing happened this time, except the peso has given back. It's given that move completely back, and it's now rallying on the election. So you had these big moves in bonds and the euro and stocks, and bonds are bouncing. The euro is reversing, and to me, stocks. I don't know. I think we're going to get a delayed reaction Costanza on this. I think stocks are gonna sell off. So we'll see.
I want to hear what Doomberg has to say, but just in response to that comment, because I totally disagree, and I love it when we disagree. I mean, the Costanza may come as a 2% to 3% dip, but $22 billion that came into that market yesterday says that there's 190 billion gazillion waiting to come into the markets now that Donald Trump is president. And that money is going to be there on the 1%, 2%, 3%, and 5% dip in pyramid. So make sure you're quick with covering your short there, handsome. We'll see what happens.
So I'm not going to feel comfortable until Trump puts his hand on the Bible on January 20th.
Yeah. Oh,
so
great point.
What happens if Biden steps down tomorrow and Kamala becomes the 47th president and Trump is the 48th president, and she issues a bunch of executive orders over the next couple of months? Like, there's a 2% chance of that happening, but you have to keep your mind open for these outlier scenarios, you know.
Go ahead, Doom.
Yeah, I got another one. Guess who has to certify the election even if Biden doesn't step down, right? So
Kamala anyway, right?
Right, the vice president, whoever that is, and then JD's case, it wouldn't be her. But I don't think those scenarios are going to happen. I do think it's a 2%, but it's not zero. And I do think that one always has to be cognizant of those types of outlier cases. I will say, if one of the things I noticed about the market yesterday is who didn't participate, which is Pfizer. I sent this to you via Slack.
Yeah.
Pfizer, Big Pharma. This is testimony to, I think, something that I think will be perhaps a theme of this discussion. The market believes that Trump is going to be way more effective this time. He's had 4 years to ponder the contested election of 2020 and what went wrong in the first term. I believe he's going to be a far more effective president in 2024 than he would have been if 100%. He had won in 2020.
100%.
And JFK Jr.'s presence and his critical role in swinging a couple of points to Trump is testimony to the fact that Big Pharma is in for a bit of a shock. And I think that's why when you see, 1,500 points on the Dow and Pfizer's flat to down on the day, the market is starting to price in a more effective Trump.
You want to buy put
And
spreads on XLV.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think RFK is for real, and
Oh,
I think Trump bought it, and I think RFK was one of the contributing factors to the 6 to 7 point swing we saw versus 2020. And I think Trump. Another thing that people are really underpricing is Trump is now no longer inhibited by the prospect of having to run for re-election again. So he's got this mandate. He's got control of the Congress, assuming the House goes as the betting markets say it will. And he's unencumbered by the need to pretend like he cares about climate change, for example, which is one of our big conclusions of our first pass analysis of this.
What is the House betting odds right now, Doomberg?
When I checked this morning at Decision Desk HQ, which is the best site I think for this thing, so it was at 88%. There's it's amazing how these elections take forever in certain states. It's stunning that, given the critical role of the outcome, that a few hundred votes in some county that nobody's ever heard of could be the fulcrum security of the whole thing. But even if the House does go Democratic, the power of the president is just awesome. I've been warning my friends on the progressive left that you don't want to concentrate as much authority in that one position as you have been doing. Each time you take over, you get all these, executive orders. Your whole thesis, JD, about Harris issuing executive orders is contrary to what the Constitution envisioned, of course, but we've gone so far away from that now that it's unrecognizable. But all the things that she can do with her pen, he can undo the day he gets in. And he's going to take a wrecking ball to anything that gets in the way of economic development. Last point I'll make before we dive into any other topics is it really doesn't matter what you, me, or JD, or anybody listening thinks. The only thing that matters right now is what does Trump think? How do you understand what that is, and how do you position for it accordingly?
yeah. And I would just love to add that I think with the decisiveness of his victory, I think that cuts down the chances of anything going wrong between now and Inauguration Day. So it seems to me like that was, the country voted with its voice, and it's
Thank
scary
God
to
he
see.
won the popular vote.
Yeah, exactly. That was a huge statement, right? Like that was amazing. And on the RFK topic, did you guys see his tweet today? FDA's war on no, I won't do it that way. FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, chelating compounds, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, vitamins, clean foods, sunshine, exercise, human nutraceuticals, and anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by pharma. If you work for the FDA and are part of this corrupt system, I have two messages for you. Preserve your records and pack your bags. Holy agenda.
Yeah, this is why you saw Pfizer not participating yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that's why. Yeah, and the put spread. I like JD's idea. I mean, there are trades that are really jumping out. What was amazing to me yesterday, the dollar rallied and it knocked all the metals on their ass, and XME breaks out like wildfire with base metals and gold going down. So I'm kind of trying to key in on messages like the market's sending like that, because that's an outstanding sign of strength in XME. And that's one of the trades that's like, I think, a new administration trade. So we'll see what happens. But I think gold. What do you think of gold, JD?
I'm not too worried about it. It kind of
Yeah.
broke down where it was supposed to. It's been up on a rope for the last 6 months, and you needed a correction. And here's your correction. Support is at 25.30, the level we broke out from. I actually think it might get down there. I think it might get down to about 25.30, and that's where you want to back up the truck. So
Yeah, totally. I couldn't agree more. I do agree that it backs off. We're going to go from one moving average to the next, and then it's going to level off for sure, because there's more central banks to be buying that. Doom, you got a view on gold at all?
I'm pretty much in the same camp as JD. I took some off after the Kazan meeting. I was uncomfortably long, and that plus its appreciation made it a far bigger portion of my savings account than I was comfortable with. I took about a third off. I'm still very long. I don't really watch it day to day. I think it is a healthy correction. It reminds me of uranium after that Icarus sprint in the high one, around 110. Felt like it was going to consolidate. It needed to consolidate. Not concerned about it. I think the XME move is interesting. I think all of this is signaling massive deregulation. and that's bullish for those stocks.
Dude, while you mention it, can you get us up to date on your uranium thoughts, just briefly?
I think Trump is very bullish for uranium. I think there's a difference between the metal and then the purified fuel rods and the construction. And one of the biggest things that I see going on right now that few are talking about is this is all going to have to go off grid. So you saw this rejection by FERC of Amazon's co-location deal. That co-location deal was signed with an existing nuclear power plant that feeds the grid. The grid powers multiple states, which means the feds regulate it. The grid can't take much more incremental demand. They're slow anyway. Getting connected with new facilities to the grid is a challenge and takes forever. And so you're going to see off-grid isolated pods where either natural gas or uranium go in the front end and data comes out the other. It's far easier to send data around the world than it is to send natural gas or radioactive uranium fuel rods. And so they're going to do it offline. And if you do it offline in the Permian, you just need the Texas Railroad Commission to approve, and FERC has no say. And so this is the trend, and any companies that enable that, you want to get long. And I think the utilities rally is underestimating the gumming up of the regulatory regime of the feds. Even with Trump in charge, it's going to take a while to work all that out. And I think the real trend is just, pop your tent in the Permian and don't even bother with the grid.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you brought the transportation mechanism into that conversation too, because what's been topical on my mind is that transports are breaking out like wildfire as well. And there were big rallies in railroads yesterday, breakout in the whole sector, which has consolidated for a solid 2 years. And now we're breaking out to new highs, and that thing could now rally for 2 years. And especially if there's a connection to the, AI power trade, that whole thing, that'd be really interesting if transports get caught up in that, or maybe just the rails or whatever it is. But airlines are breaking out like a house on fire too. And it's really interesting to see that sector take off. It's really, really a very bullish mechanism within the S&P. JD, what do you think? Oh, what do we want to talk about Trump's positions on clean energy a bit, Doom, or something of that line? Like, what do you think the read through is now?
This is probably the biggest consequence of the election that, again, I don't think is getting enough attention. And it draws back on the Trump no longer has to worry about what he says because he's not up for re-election. Trump has, again, and then whether you believe this or not doesn't matter. Trump believes that climate change is a hoax invented by the Chinese for the purpose of deindustrializing the U.S. for their benefit. And his number one agenda is sparking a manufacturing industrial boom. He talks about it all the time. He views China as the main opponent in that, and he views climate change, carbon emissions, and all of that jazz as the primary weapon the Chinese have used to distort our politics and to deindustrialize the U.S. And anytime he's in the Rust Belt, he talks about it. And I think the next piece we're putting in...
That is a powerful word, deindustrialize. That is... Yeah.
And that's what's happening in Germany today, by the way. I mean, wherever you adopt renewable energy, you deindustrialize. And so the next piece we're working on is called Closing Time, how the election of Trump marks the end of climate change as a political force. It's over. He is going to drill, baby, drill. The support for renewables in the Inflation Reduction Act is going to be sacrificed in the name of cutting taxes. The EPA is going to be fully neutered. And he's going to listen to his friends and contacts in industry as he formulates the U.S. industrial revolution. And it's going to be driven by dirt cheap natural gas, which is basically free in the Permian today, nuclear, drilling for oil. I think this is bearish for Ukraine because Trump really doesn't care about Russia and Ukraine as much as he cares about China. So the climate change thing is we're going to back out of the Paris Accord again, and then he's going to do it in a way that would require a Senate vote to get back in. All the lessons he's learned from the first term and how it ended are going to be put to work in a far more effective way. And again, if you're long a supplier of glue for wind turbines, you're not very happy that Trump won. I think that's why we're seeing a bit of weakness in silver, by the way, because silver is basically an industrial metal that is primarily consumed in the solar industry.
Oh, I could kiss you on the lips, Doomberg. I've been calling silver an industrial metal for years now.
It's not a monetary metal. It's closer to copper than it is gold. It's on the spectrum for sure, but it's closer to copper than it is gold.
Silver is on the spectrum. That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the Trump climate change earthquake, like next week is COP29 in, and nobody's going. Like it's over, guys. And the thing about climate change, it was so pounded into the minds of everybody that people are going to be very slow to react to what Trump is going to do, which sets up trading opportunities in our view.
Now, what was amazing that you said, I agree with, he's going to be drill, baby, drill. And the oil chart had a really powerful bottom in it yesterday and rallied from $70 bucks to 72.50. I mean, that's a Costanza in my mind. I would have assumed that oil would have at least backed off a bit on a Trump presidency. Do you guys have any views on that, on the oil price or anything, or the interaction of the Trump with oil price or something? JD?
I mean, it was down like while the election results were being calculated. Like, oil was down about $1.50. And then it kind of crawled back to unch. Then it was up the next day. I actually was surprised by the lack of volatility. We've had like 3 months of like 5 and 6% moves, and on the election we had like a 1 or 2% move. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. After the Biden election and he started with the executive orders, the oil market, the markets kind of took off. They rallied right into that. The gas price went flying. And Trump is going to come in and undo all of that. And I'm sitting here waiting for the prices to go, get slammed, and no such thing is happening. Maybe the energy markets had him priced in a long time ago.
Yeah, I think long term he's undeniably, all things being equal, bearish for oil prices, bullish for oil production, which is bearish for production equities and bullish for services equities in the sector, right?
Yeah.
He's going to drill, baby, drill. I think there's the big unknown in the oil market is his stance vis-a-vis Israel-Iran, and whether he is, going to be able to help de-escalate the situation over there. And if he is antagonistic towards Iran and supportive towards Netanyahu, it's possible that some of the rebound after the initial inflective move down, when it was becoming apparent that he was going to win, is pricing in a bit of geopolitical risk in the Middle East that had been all but priced out of the market after they had their little theatrical exchange of missiles over the past couple of weeks. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. And that's very difficult to model. I don't actually know what Trump thinks today about Iran and Israel. And so we don't really have a clear view on it, but that's one possible interpretation. But in the long run, OPEC, the financial break-even price of oil that Saudi Arabia needs to balance its budget, I saw was like $95 a barrel. OPEC has been holding back supply. Oil is a managed market, which everyone needs to remember. There's a giant cartel in the middle of it that is trying to manage prices within a band. $70 is their floor. And so if it drops below that, I think, you could see mid-50s pretty quickly in the long run. But there's no question that I think if you have a stock that is correlated with the volume produced in the U.S., it's going to go up because we're going to produce more oil here, and there's plenty of it to go get.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you guys think about positioning? Like, is there a tweak to your long-term investment portfolio with Trump winning the election? Is there a call to action somewhere? Like, I'm trying to figure out how to get myself and my clients into the right sectors for this. And I want to make sure that I'm in the ones that are booming. I mean, fucking NVIDIA is about to go through 150. Right? This sector has not slowed down. The 3 subsectors that I flagged in the Navigator that all broke out on October 1st, they broke a 2-year range: software, internet, and cloud storage, and cybersecurity. And they're all exploding, right? We're watching metals and industrials explode. Transports are exploding. Uranium miners are bouncing back to the highs. I mean, cannabis got taken to the final woodshed. There's definitely portfolio considerations on this side of.
I think you're leaving out banks. I think banks are really.
Oh God, banks! I did leave out banks. My God, Go ahead, JD. Totally, they were on the top of my list.
So all the banks were up like 10% on election day.
12.
Um, yeah. So there's a couple things going on here. One, it's the yield curve. So the yield curve steepened. I actually don't think it steepened anywhere near enough. I think it should have steepened much more. So the yield
Curve
curve is
hasn't moved.
steepening. And second of all, the Biden administration has been using the financial sector as basically a giant piggy bank for fines for the last 4 years. They've extracted billions and billions of dollars out of the sector for some misdeeds here and there. That's going to come to an end. I don't think it was fully priced in on election day. I think banks have a lot more upside. That's one thing I would be looking at.
Oh, 100%, man. I'm the reason that I forgot to mention that is that got wiped off the top of my page when I copied the information over. But I said yesterday, like, nothing screams capitalism is in and Marxism is out like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, and American Express just extending double-digit percentages to new all-time highs, right? That's a great point. I mean, it's going to be a sector that's the one, man. Maybe that's the one.
Yeah, on the flip side, if you just take a look at the solar ETFs after the election, TAN was down 15% at the open yesterday. This whole climate change agenda, I think, is just off the table. And maybe Braden can pull up that chart that I sent you guys, and we could talk a bit more, because the visualization of this phenomenon on this chart, you'll see the total carbon emissions of the U.S. and China since 2000. China has just gone to a straight line up and to the right. They don't care about climate change. The U.S. has, mostly through cutting back on coal burning and replacing it with natural gas, has stayed flat and has come down a little bit. But Trump views carbon emissions as a proxy for manufacturing intensity. And by the way, China dominates the solar industry, and that's another reason why he probably doesn't want to buy it. And so I just do think that anything that benefits from lack of federal oversight and into a manufacturing boom, that's coming. It's coming. By the way, the U.S. military wants to reindustrialize. We have outsourced most of our supply chains to China. We can't fight a war with China today because they make all the critical ingredients that we need to build missiles. And like just this last week, there was a story about China cut off supply of a critical battery for U.S. drones that are going into the war in Ukraine. And what can we do about it? Nothing, because we don't know how to make those batteries. We need to learn how to make stuff again.
Yeah.
And that's what Trump means when he says make America great again. He means guys with lunch boxes getting in a van, showing up for work, and building stuff at a factory where energy goes in and finished products come out. And we're going to see that. The U.S. has a huge advantage in this regard as the dirt cheap natural gas. People don't realize, like, every cogeneration facility in the country, and there's hundreds of them, that burns natural gas to create both electricity and heat, are at a huge advantage relative to the rest of the world. It's such an advantage that could probably offset the cheap labor that caused people to move in the first place. And so he's going to incentivize reindustrialization in a huge way. And the market is just internalizing that right now.
Doom, I love that you just captured literally, a beautiful, scientist perspective of what the markets told me yesterday. And I'm sitting there, I'm talking to Maggie Lake after the close, and my eyes are popping out of my head at the charts that I'm looking at. And I'm like, this is a lot of emotional, like, this is unbelievable. Like what the markets are saying today is making a real statement. And you just enunciated that really beautifully about what Trump can do with, to reindustrialize America. That includes the military and everything. And man, this country is going to get reshaped, with him building things up like that. And Robert Kennedy taking down things like Big Pharma. And, I'm sure that we're going to not be watching pharmaceutical ads on TV anymore sometime very soon, to level us off with the rest of the world. And, imagine the population getting healthier along the way. I mean.
So, Tony, that's a big one, by the way. That's two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
If he prohibits Big Pharma from advertising, that's the end of CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. The traditional media gets all their revenue.
Also, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
Yeah.
No, don't take off Jeopardy. God forbid. No, but seriously, I
There'd be a lot
said
of
that in my
sports.
tweet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Doom, I'm
Yeah.
taking the floor
Yeah.
for 1 second. I said that in my tweet yesterday when I was like, look, put your freaking politics aside if you're a trader. Just drop it. I don't care. There are going to be so many opportunities in this market. Focus on those. And the best part is you're going to watch all the media companies literally shut down one by one. And that was my thought process is if RFK takes down Big Pharma, then they're doing no more advertising. And then those people have nobody to freaking turn the lights on for them every
It's
day.
going to
So
be the My Pillow guy for the win, right? He's going to be the last man standing.
holy shit, what a call. My Pillow for the win. Braden, throw the My Pillow freaking visual up. That is beautiful, man. Great call,
Hey,
Doom.
guys, I want to get back. I didn't fully articulate what I was talking about before with
Please,
stocks.
go.
With sentiment. So, do you remember in my newsletter after the Republican convention, I said that people were dancing in the aisles in the convention. This is the local top for Trump, right? I even said this on the podcast. I was like,
Yeah.
it's going to go the other way, right? We are at the same place. People are dancing in the streets. Okay. And the other thing I will say is the election is what I would call scheduled volatility, right? It's not an unexpected event, it's a scheduled event, and we get volatility around that event. So, with scheduled volatility, the only way that you get a right way move is if the move was unexpected, like 2016, right? But this was somewhat expected. It was about 60% priced in, right? So I do think we get a reversal. Everybody piled in at the top. I think we get a short term pullback that is pretty dramatic. I think it happens probably next week, and then things will start to short themselves out. So that's what I'm looking for in stocks.
Yeah, another source of potential volatility is if the last minute counting of these congressional districts gives the Democrats control of the House, then you could see some of the big moves that we've just been talking about reverse a bit, as it looks like we might have Trump limited to the pen and not just the the congressional houses as well.
JD, do you want to bet me that the S&P doesn't trade the 50-day moving average down at 57.71 for the rest of November?
No, that's a bad bet. No.
Okay, I'm just trying to pin you to the wall here a little bit. I don't mean to be
Yeah,
mean or
57.71
anything.
is too low. I would say 58.50, 58 quarter,
So 150 points, 150 points of slippage. Yeah, man. I mean,
So there's
popcorn
another
part pullback.
There's another potential sort of swan event too, is that China's just not going to sit there and watch the U.S. take back all the goodies they took from us over the past decade. They could take the real bazooka out, which would be very bullish for stocks.
And aren't there like military headlines coming out of China that I'm seeing out of like my peripheral vision? Or
the new base, just showed up in the South China Sea, and China moves at China speed, right? And and so people radically underestimate that. But if we see the real bazooka from Xi Jinping, I mean, again, the slosh of liquidity that would inject into the markets. And by the way, like a lot of it just ends up coming here because people like to have U.S. assets in their portfolios, right? And so that's another thing that, like, if we do see a pullback, but China's going to respond, right? And so it's a bit of a chaotic situation. But I do think, look, Trump, if you just pull back, Trump likes his numbers to go up. So I think like this is very inflationary, which is why you need to be in stocks or gold or some hedge that you think works. He wants higher GDP. He wants more investment. He doesn't care about deficits. You're seeing the long bond price in a totally different atmosphere right now. So I think, in the end, if you have sort of a literal economic arms race with China, you're going to see, you certainly don't want to be sitting in cash, is sort of my view.
I couldn't agree more. What, no, I don't know which way to go with that, actually. JD, what are your thoughts? Anything else we discuss in closing? We're coming up on a half hour, and we just put in a crisp all market and headline narrative-driven commentary that I thought was one of the best 30 minutes of macro dirt conversations we've had.
I just want to say,
thoughts?
I think the election was about three things. I think there's three reasons why Biden lost. Okay, number one was the border. Beyond incompetence, it was malfeasance. It was beyond incompetence at the border. Number two was inflation. Now, Trump started the stimulus during the pandemic, but Biden continued it way longer than was necessary. That's what created the inflation. So it's the border and inflation, and it's also a rejection of wokeness. That
Yeah.
that third thing is really what this is all about, right?
Yeah. That's a great observation, JD. I couldn't agree more. And it's go ahead, Doom. I want to hear
I'll
what you have
give
to
you
say.
two closing thoughts to get a sense for where the administration is ultimately going to go. Keep a close eye on who Trump nominates for the State Department, and whether we're truly, Trump prides himself on, quote, I had no wars when I was in president. He's inheriting active wars, and how he lands those planes is going to be interesting to watch. But whether he nominates, an isolationist or a neocon in that position, I think will be really important to see. And then who he picks for Secretary of Energy is going to be a big deal. I'm seeing the governor of North Dakota being tossed around as a candidate. Of course, North Dakota is a big oil and gas state. My preferred candidate would be Joe Manchin, the outgoing Democratic senator from West Virginia. But who he puts in that position is going to be very important as well. But the first one we're watching closely is Secretary of State. So with that, yeah, it's been fantastic discussion, Tony and JD. It's really great.
Yeah, really good. And one last thing that I'm dying to see, because I'm dying to see it. He said he was going to release the Epstein list. And if he does, I mean, that might be the end of Hollywood as we know it, kind of thing. Or, it might be the end of a lot of things. Hollywood media, like, it's going to be really transformational. And with the Diddy thing going on in the background, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out about this. And I got a feeling that it's going to change this country in a good way. And I think that is one note that I'm happy to end on, unless anybody else has anything to contribute. This was awesome, Doom. What an amazing guest you are, and so timely. Thank you for coming on right after the election. JD, thank you for expressing that adorable little bearish view in the S&P. I'm teasing you. I'm ready to back up the truck. I'm so bullish I can't see straight. But that's the end, gang. End of Macro Dirt 20. But I have a good announcement before we close up shop here. JD and I are about to launch a Macro Dirt subscriber package where you are going to be able to subscribe to both of our newsletters in one place and get a small discount for subscribing to both of us at one time. So that's a product that the market's been calling for, and we are creating it in the background, and that will be launched at some point soon. So that's exciting. And hasta la vagina, everybody.
Hasta la vagina.
Peace.